Hi, everybody. So awesome that you came to this workshop. There's so many other things to be doing. I'm very affirmed that you came to this workshop. I feel very proud. Isn't this just the most awesome conference? Sorry about this thing. Yeah, it's just incredible. And now that there's 3,000 people, I remember the first one I went to had 200, and it was just such a precious, little tribe of weird people trying to make sense of the world of technology and all the, stuff that we have to put up with. And I remember early on in the years that Wisdom has Sorum's been doing these wonderful conferences. I heard at one point, and I think I heard it here. Someone, wise person, said the more digital we get, the more ritual we need. The more digital we get, the more ritual we need. And I consider this conference the great ritual of we sort of started with the technology people, but now it's for all of us, because all of us are technology people, even the ones that don't understand how to turn on our TV anymore. We have to deal with it. So I really bow to you for being here. I bow to Sorum for creating this, and all the volunteers that are here, and the people who sponsor this, and the tuition you paid, and just to make something like this happen. It's really, really important right now, I think. And so bravo for us. Let's just acknowledge ourselves. So thank you for joining us. This is a 45-minute deep dive into our relationship with money. And as our wonderful, I forgot your name, wonderful gentleman who introduced me, said, I wrote a book called The Soul of Money. And I wrote it because I'm not really an author, although if you write a book, I guess you're an author. So I guess I'm an author. I call myself an author. But, I really, it was really hard to write a book. What I really am is a global pro-activist. I call myself a pro-activist, an activist for, not against. An activist who's rooted in the vision I have for the future, not what is obstructing that vision, not what's wrong with the world, but what I see as possible. Without the naivete of not thinking that I don't need to deal with what's in the way, but knowing that if you get caught in that too much, you lose your soul, you lose your heart, you burn yourself out, and you can't stay rooted in or committed to your vision. So I call myself a pro-activist, to keep myself pro in a world where there's a lot to be against. And I want to just acknowledge that, because I'm not a business person. I didn't go to business school. I have trouble bouncing my checkbook. I'm a weird, wonderful, normal person, hopefully like you. In my relationship with money. But in the job of being a pro-activist for many years for the Hunger Project, working to end world hunger, working with the Institute of Noetic Sciences on consciousness studies, working with the Nobel Women's Initiative on empowering women and girls, and working with Pachamama Alliance to preserve the world's tropical rainforests and educate people around the world in environmental sustainability, social justice, and deep spiritual fulfillment. You got to raise a lot of money to do that stuff. How many of you are fundraisers here, or have ever raised money, or have ever thought you needed to raise money, or have done everything you could to avoid raising money? Okay, that's everybody. Okay, so one of my dharmas, and I actually used to think it was my karma, but now I know it's my dharma, is fundraising. And I love fundraising. I love asking people for money. I know most people don't like that very much, that thing, but I love asking people for money. I've been doing it since I was 5 years old, and that's how I have, really. I started in kindergarten. I got an early start because I know that the way money is orienting us in our society, and the way we are orienting ourselves around money, and where money is flowing is not where we want it to flow, not where we want it to go. And I'm committed, and have been committed since I kind of got it about money, that at least in my life, I would do everything I can to move money away from fear, away from the uses of destruction, away from quote unquote defense, which is really weapons, away from war, to facilitate the reallocation of money away from uses of fear, destruction, overconsumption, destroying our environment, to reallocating that money to love, life, the preservation of life, the health and well-being of our children, the health and well-being of our communities, the health and well-being of all children of all species for all time. And if you're someone who fundraises, if you're someone who's awake on this planet, and I know you are because you're at this conference, you're doing that too every day. You are what I consider to be doing the sacred work of fundraising, which is moving money away from fear and destruction towards preservation, conservation, nourishment, life, and love. And I think that's a huge, huge part of solving all the problems we have in this world. Money is going huge proportions of money are going towards what we hate, what we're afraid of, what we resist, and the behaviors like consuming way, way, way more stuff than we need that are really damaging us, damaging future generations, and damaging all species and the environment on which we depend. And when we facilitate the reallocation of financial resources towards that which we care most about, that's philanthropy, that's fundraising, that's actually being conscious in your relationship with money, and it will quiet your soul. It will nourish you to reallocate, rethink, recalibrate the way you use money, the way you earn it, the way you spend it, the way you invest it, the way you contribute it, and in every way, the way you use it. So I want to just tell you a little bit about my journey, and then we'll do some exercises, try to get as much as I can in the time that we have to kind of help you, if you're here for this, I hope you are, to have some peace and freedom in your relationship with money. No matter how much you think you have, no matter how much you think you don't have, I can tell you from working with what I call resource people all over this planet, people in war situations, famine situations, refugee camps, all the way from some of the most resource poor people on earth, and I don't call those people poor, by the way. Many of you have heard me say that. I don't call people poor. Can you hear me? I don't call people poor because they're not. What's poor is their circumstances, never them. Never them. When we label people by their financial circumstances or by the circumstances of their life, we demean ourselves and we demean them. They are whole and complete, remarkable people living in the circumstances of poverty. That's what's poor, not them. So I never use the word poor associated with a person. Because you start using those labels with people, they start to buy it. Oh, thank you. I also never use the word rich with people, you know, even though they're the people when you're a fundraiser, you're looking for them. Where are they? What's their phone number and their email and all that stuff? But when you label people by their financial circumstances, even if they're the kind of circumstances we all would wish for ourselves, it demeans them. It has them start thinking that's who they are. People are not their trust fund. People start thinking they are their stock price. And then when it goes down, something happens to their self-worth, not their net worth, their self-worth. So I invite us to consider the possibility that the labeling of people by where they are on some economic spectrum diminishes our capacity to relate to each other as whole and complete, loving, accepting human beings, and that we stop doing that. So from working with people that I used to call poor, but I would never label them that way any longer, people living in resource-poor circumstances, people living in situations of abject poverty, people living in the crushing reality of post-war situations, people living in situations that are almost unbearable for us to tolerate or to even be with, who are whole and complete people, often people who I find to be some of the most courageous, intelligent, even though they may not know how to read or write, innovative, and brave people on this planet, because that's what it takes to live with those circumstances. Two, people all the way here on the other end of the spectrum who you and I would label people of great wealth. And that that situation, that set of circumstances, although attractive to almost all of us, is often its own kind of tyranny, its own kind of crushing reality. In some of our wealthiest families, in the halls of power where wealth buys and sells just about everything, there is a lot of loneliness, there's a lot of sense of abandonment, there's an uncommon amount of addiction, bulimia, anorexia, and particularly depression, suicide. So it's not all that it seems. And that doesn't have to be that way. There's people who live in the circumstance of wealth who are totally healthy and well, and you may be, some of us may be here. But I want to just say that it's not the amount of money or resources that person has that gives them their real worth. And we all know this. We've known it since we were born. We know it right now. But the society we live in does not behave consistent with that truth. And that's something that we every day need to deal with. So working with people all the way across the spectrum, and then all of us in the middle here, I have discovered that there is so much suffering in people's relationship with money. It is just really a deep, deep, dark place in most people's lives. And it's not necessarily related to how much they have or don't have. If you think about yourself and your relationship with money, let's say, most people, and maybe this isn't true for you, think that if they have just 30% more than what they have now, everything will be really, really great. But then when you get 30% more, you still think that you need 30% more. And then things really, really would be great. You were wrong about the amount. Of course you were. It is 30% more than that. But you look back 30% ago and really, nothing really changes. I mean, yes, life is more comfortable. It's easier. There's more, there's more opportunities and privileges with more financial resources. But it is not really all that it's cracked up to be. And many, 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 many people tell you that. Many, 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 many people told me that. But let's look at what's underneath all of this suffering around money. What's underneath it? Why so much suffering around money, no matter how much people have or don't have? I've worked with billionaire families where they're miserable. They're really miserable. So the money did not resolve the misery. So what is this suffering? And I'm going to say, one of the kind of key things that I've discovered in the years and years of raising hundreds of millions of dollars for the work that we all care about, I've discovered that the source of the suffering is in the culture in which we live, and then we personalize it. The suffering is embedded in the money culture. That's why it covers everybody. We live in a money culture. It's not your personal rainstorm. For those of you who've taken landmark courses, there's a wonderful phrase, it's not your personal rainstorm, it's raining on everybody else too. Yet we think it's so personal. It's all about me. It's all about the things I did or didn't do. I didn't buy Google at the right moment, and I did buy that other thing that went bust, or I, stole something in 7th grade, and somebody's going to find out someday, or I had a harsh father who screamed at me, and so that's why I'm all screwed up about money, or I went bankrupt, or it was that horrible divorce, and he or she was so awful to me. We have all kinds of stories around money. We have what I call money sob stories. And we tell them over and over and over again to ourselves to justify any lack of responsibility or any of the suffering we have about money. But I want to suggest that you consider, at least till 3:45, that the suffering in the culture doesn't really belong to you. You have assumed it, and you've personalized it, and you've made it your own. And where does the suffering in the culture come from? The suffering in the culture comes from the lies we tell about money in the culture of money in which we live. Now, there's a lot of Buddhists here, probably in this room, and with Roshi Joan here, and Jack Kornfield, and Sharon Salzberg. I'm not a Buddhist, but I do know that Buddha said some really cool things. And one of them that I really love that he said was that the source of all suffering is a lie. The source of all suffering is a lie. And so I've been looking really pretty much all my adult life at what are the lies we tell about money that are the source of all the suffering people have in their life around money. And I'm going to tell you a couple of the lies I've discovered and see if that's a fit for you, because once we look at the lies, there's a little bit of a release. So one of the lies we tell about money is we've forgotten that we invented it. We've forgotten we invented it. So money it does not grow on trees. Pennies do not fall from heaven. I know we've all noticed this. It's not part of the natural world. We, human beings, invented it. Not that long ago, frankly, if you look at the big swath of history, about 3,500, 4,500 years ago, it became a formalized part of civilization and society. Not that long ago. And before that, we were a split barter gift economy. If you were the pig farmer and I was the cobbler and I wanted a pig, I fixed your shoes and you gave me a pig. But if you were a pig farmer and I was the cobbler and you didn't need your shoes fixed, then I was up a creek. So I'd need to find out what you needed. And if you told me you needed corn, then I'd go over here and get corn from you and fix your shoes and get corn. And then I'd give you corn and you give me a pig. And it was just got really complicated. So, I mean, really, it's really, I mean, I know it sounds so dorky, but that actually is how the whole thing got started. So we invented money. Now, we really invented money to facilitate. Here's the purpose, the original purpose of money. Money historians do exist, and you can study this. The reason, the purpose, the original mission of money was to facilitate the sharing of goods and resources so everyone would have what they needed. That was the original purpose of money in the community, in the village, to facilitate the sharing of goods and resources so everybody would have what they needed. That was the original purpose of money 4,500, 3,500 years ago. Historians argue about when it became formalized. And if you think about that, that's a beautiful purpose for something. That's noble. That ennobles every life. That's about everybody having what they need. That has equanimity, that has generosity. That's a beautiful purpose. It's inspiring even. But somewhere along the way, that purpose line, if you drew a purpose line towards the future, it started to go like this. It started to go off. And now, thousands of years later, money is used to marginalize, to dominate, to control, to withdraw from many, many millions, billions of people what they need for the benefit of a small handful of people. So now money is totally off its original purpose line. And there's lots of people in this room who could talk about the invention of banking and then the invention of interest when people started making money with money and not producing anything for anybody else. There started to be a whole world around that. We now call it Wall Street. That actually is, and then there's derivatives of the derivatives of the derivatives of the derivatives. Now it's so complicated, nobody can even figure out what's going on. When the stock market goes down 600 points, no one can even practically explain it. So now it's almost like out of our hands. So this thing, money, we invented it. So just to go back to that as that's a fundamental lie. I'm calling it a lie. I'm insulting it with that word, lie. That's at the heart of the culture of money in which we live. And it produces suffering, that lie. Another lie we tell about money is we forgot that what gives money its value is us. So money has no value except the value we assign to it. We assign it its value. It's just paper or blips on a computer screen. It has no value, no meaning other than the meaning we assign to it. So if I passed around this room a Zambian kwacha, which is a large currency in Zambia, it's orange and very beautiful, and they have big money in in Zambia, the country in southern Africa. You would be fascinated with the piece of paper. Really, it's about an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. All the money is that large in that country. It kind of weird, and And if I passed a Zambian kwacha around, on the first row, and then it went to the second row, just so you could see it. There's a picture of the Zambezi River and a rhinoceros, which is their holy animal, and then Kenneth Cohn, the great freedom fighter, is on the main currency, just like in our $20 bill. And we pass it around, and you could frame it. It's a beautiful piece of art. Somebody designed it and approved the copy. It's money that somebody made up. When it got to about, let's say, halfway through the room, and I would say, by the way, where is that Zambian kwacha? That actually is worth $100,000. No one would hear what I said next. And your heads would be turning, and you would be trying to find out where it was, and the person who had it in their hand would not pass it on, and something weird would happen here. And that is a little silly example of the fact that we would have assigned that piece of paper its power over us. We would have assigned it its power. Power comes from us, it's not in the money. And we have assigned money so much power. We, our society, you and I are part of this. I'm not accusing you, I'm including you. We've assigned so much power and meaning to money that we've made it more important than human life. If you look at the way we behave as a culture now, as a civilization, we have made it way more important than human life, and there's not a person in this room or outside of this room who doesn't know that that's a lie. So we will kill for money, even good people. We will lie and cheat and scratch for money. We will, even the best of us, not speak to a relative for years over a money issue, our mother even, our ex, our daughter, our brother-in-law, a friend we loaned money to and never paid us back and we can't even talk to them. We will sacrifice a relationship for money. We do it all the time. There's people in this room, including myself, who have done that. That says money's more important than our relationship. We will make a killing rather than a living. Many, many, many people will do that. We all will, in a way. We will make a dying rather than a living. By that I mean doing something we hate that gives us no self-expression because we have to make something work to bring home the bacon. Making a killing is doing something that we know is damaging somebody somewhere, but we look the other way, damaging the environment, polluting a river, engaging in some sort of cheap labor, maybe even slave labor. But if we make a killing, if we make enough of a killing, then everyone can look the other way, and you even get praised for it. So people make a killing and a dying rather than a living. Many people do. Probably not the people in this conference, but you know what I mean. And that's a lie. That's living inside of a lie. And we laud people for it, unfortunately, in this culture. That's another lie we tell about money. We've made money more important than the natural world. We will cut down a rainforest. This is one of my issues for money. The very life support system on which we depend, we will destroy it for money. That means we've made money more important than the natural world. And we've made money more important than God and spirit. We've given it more meaning than God and spirit. We used to be in church on Sunday morning. Now we're in the shopping centers on Sunday morning. So we tell what I'm calling lies about money in our culture that in my view are the source of our great suffering. We've even allowed ourselves to become consumers rather than citizens. Remember when we used to call ourselves citizens? I mean, it isn't that long ago. The word citizen means he or she who's responsible, holds himself accountable for the well-being of the community, the well-being of the state, the well-being of the country, the well-being of the world. But we have devolved in the labels that we allow ourselves to be referred to from citizen to consumer. And the word consumer means he or she who takes, diminishes, or destroys. We're called consumers. We're marketed to as consumers. We call each other consumers. That's a very ugly label for you and me when you really think about it. That's not who we are. That's not who you are. That's another lie we tell in the money world, from the money culture. And then the big one, and the one that I'd like you to do a little exercise on, is what I call the lie of scarcity. The lie of scarcity. And this is a pretty big one, and I'm going to frame it a little differently. Not only is it a lie, but it is a whole condition of thinking now, a field, almost like a something we inhabit. A lie, the lie of scarcity, that that is a unconscious, unexamined network of assumptions, if you can follow this. An unconscious, unexamined way of seeing the world, where even before consideration, before decision, before thought, we look out in the world and there's not enough. There's not enough time. There's not enough money. There's not enough sex. There's not enough hours in the day. There's not enough hours in the night. There's not enough weekends. There's not enough week. There's not enough good men over 40. That's true. Oh. Sorry for the single women here. That's true, though. But you know, we have this, there's not enough, there's not enough, there's not enough, there's not enough. There's not enough time to eat breakfast before we go to work. There's not enough time to help the kids with their schoolwork. There's not enough time to drive them to school. There's not enough time to look at your emails. There's not enough time to look at your texts. You can't possibly go out to lunch because you have to eat at your desk because there's not enough time to finish this conference call and this meeting. And then by the time you get to the end of the day, you haven't finished everything. Oh my God, well, I have to do it on my way home, and we're texting in the car as we're driving in the traffic, and then we can't pick up the kids and somebody else has to do it. And then we get home and we don't have time to eat. Well, we eat, but then we have to work after we go to bed. We can't read in the store. We have to put in bed. And then we get a little. We wake up in the morning. We didn't get enough sleep. We go to bed, and we didn't get enough done. That's our day. Does that sound familiar? So that's a scarcity mentality that haunts every human being, particularly now, given all these technologies that are supposed to save us so much time. So I invite you to consider the possibility that you live in a day that has scarcity at the first moment. You wake up, I didn't get enough sleep. It doesn't matter when you went to bed. It's an unconscious, unexamined thought, an automatic pilot thought. And you go to bed with the thought, I didn't get enough done, perhaps. You bookend your whole day with a mindset of scarcity. Most people do. If you don't, you're so lucky. You are a mutant and you should be leading the next seminar. I suggest that we live in a mindset of scarcity. And the mindset of scarcity prevails. It's like the water we swim in. We don't even realize that there's not enough messages are everywhere. And that there's not enough messages also generate what I call the toxic myths in which we live in the money culture and in the culture in which we live. The toxic myths, and there are 3 of them, and I forgot to ask for a flip chart, but I'm going to tell you what they are and you can remember them. The first one is there's not enough. That's pretty prevalent. Most conversations about what there's not enough of, most companies are what there's not enough of, most NGOs are talking about all day long what they don't have enough of. And this deficit culture of there's not enough, it's not enough, we don't have enough, there's not enough, it's not enough, we don't have enough, starts to get in the psyche, in the heart and soul of who you are, and you start living in a deficit relationship with yourself, and you start thinking, I am not enough. I am not enough. So we live in a deficit mentality, a deficit culture, an automatic pilot way of looking at the world. We look out at the world and there's not enough. That mindset is a false mindset. I'm calling it a lie. I'm going to tell you the truth before 3:45, but I'm calling it and naming it a lie. But I want you to look and see if you're caught in it, because most people are. And it generates the second toxic myth, which is more is better. More is better. More jeans, more boots, more square feet in my house, more market share, more volunteers, more this, more that, more food, more this, more freeways, more companies, more everything. More is better. An indiscriminate more is better. Not a sane, grounded more, but more, 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 more. And if you're in advertising and marketing, which many people probably are here, you're doing an excellent job of convincing us we need more of absolutely everything. More of absolutely everything. You know, how many pairs of black pants does one woman need? I bet you have more than one pair of black pants, ladies, right? Okay, so that's just one tiny example. I'm joking, but I'm also serious. The more is better culture is so out of control that people are building houses that have one child or two children that have, 26,000 square feet. I mean, and then they have a summer home and a boat and an island and an airplane and, really, I mean, and that is not just extravagant demonstration of wealth. It comes from the mindset more is better. And the poster industry, forgive me if you're in this industry, for the more is better culture is something called storage. It's a huge industry in the United States and growing all over the world. Outside of San Francisco, where I live here, in Emeryville, which isn't far away, or in Richmond, or in Redwood City, or north of Marin. There's little villages of our storage. Little houses. Some of them are kind of cute, little houses with the stuff that we cannot fit in the houses we have, the apartments we have. They're so filled with stuff that we have to build little houses and apartments for the stuff that doesn't fit in our houses. I mean, really, it's gross. And you probably have noticed here in San Francisco, we have many, 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 many homeless people, but we are not building houses for them. We are building houses for the stuff we cannot fit in the houses that we already live in. So that's a little sign that we might be a little off. Okay, so then that's the second toxic myth of more is better. More and more and more and more and more of everything. And every advertisement and every marketing message really is subtly telling you you're not enough until you acquire more of whatever it is that we're all trying to sell you. So there's a constant, I've been told by some of the marketing people that are probably in this room, that in a modern American city now, most people receive in some form upwards of somewhere between 10 and 30,000 messages a day, telling them that they're not enough and they need more of something in some form, whether it's on the internet or in some sort of a television ad or written in the sky or whatever it is you can think of. So more is better is a huge, huge part of our culture. And I just want to go back to there's not enough. I would just want to point out that in the United States, this is very relevant right now. We have the largest debt. We're the richest country in the history of the world. And we have the largest debt in the history of the world. Now, how does that work? So I would say, and it's just getting bigger. And I would say, there's a lot of people who could talk about that in a lot of different ways, but I'm going to say it's an accurate reflection. Our deficit is an accurate reflection of a culture that only values outer riches and gives no value to inner riches. It's an accurate reflection of what this conference is trying to address. The deficit, think about that. The deficit is an accurate reflection of a culture that gives no value, zero value, in fact, almost laughs at inner riches and only values outer riches. That's a deficit culture. So the third toxic myth is that's just the way it is. And that's just the way that it is, though it sounds a little more harmless, is the worst of the three toxic myths. There's not enough, more is better. That's just the way that it is. Holds it in place. Holds the whole mindset, the unconscious, unexamined mindset in place so that we think we can't do anything about it. We just have to buy in. We become resigned. We give up. We think we can't possibly make a difference. So that's the lethal one. That's the toughest one to face, that we think that's just the way that it is. So those three toxic myths, I believe, make up the culture in which you and I live that And those 3 toxic myths, as I'm putting it in this category called the lie of scarcity, I say is the source of so much of this deep suffering in our culture around money. And we've exported it beautifully all over the world now. Everybody around the world agrees there's not enough, more is better, and that's just the way that it is. And it's an unconscious, unexamined mindset that prevails. It's the water we swim in. And it's painful, it's hurtful, it's a lie, and it creates suffering. Now, I want to just back up and say I worked on hunger and poverty for most of my life. I know there's people who don't have enough. I know there's places where people need more water, more jobs. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about you and me. And we live in a scarcity mentality with all the riches in our lives right in front of us. We still buy into that mentality. We still buy into that deficit way of thinking. I suggest, and I invite you to take a look at that now. So let me see what time I have. Ah! Okay, so now... Now I'm going to tell you the radical, surprising truth. I was going to have you do an exercise. Could you just close your eyes for like 30 seconds? That will be enough time. And see where you might be caught in the scarcity culture yourself. Okay, let's just open our eyes and look at someone without speaking. Just look at someone near you, and then someone behind you, and someone in front of you. Just look in their eyes and have your eyes meet. Do you see any deficit? Do you see any lack in those eyes, in that face? Do you see anything that's needed? Do you see anything missing in those faces around you? So I'm going to tell you the radical, surprising truth now. Ready? Now, I always think anyone who says they're telling the truth or has a handle on the truth is full of bullshit. So I will just say right now, this is my theory, and you don't have to agree, but I think it's really worth paying attention to. Because I learned it from Buckminster Fuller. And I loved Buckminster Fuller with all my heart, and he was one of my greatest teachers in the 20th century, way back long ago. And he really taught me and millions of people that humanity is doing so much more with so much less. And that is the direction of our innovation. That is the direction of our science. That is the direction of our creativity. That is the direction of who we are. That we live in a world, and according to Bucky, will always live in a world where there is enough for everyone, everywhere to have a healthy and productive life. That there is enough for everyone, not some of us, not even most of us, but for everyone to have a healthy and productive life. Bucky talked very profoundly about the distinction of sufficiency, different than abundance, sufficiency, enough, being met by the universe with exactly what you need, over and over and over and over again. And that's actually what's really going on. And when we open ourselves to the profound sufficiency, the profound enoughness of our own life, our own country, our own community, our own family, our own relationship, our own work, the profound enoughness, sufficiency, being met with exactly what we need, maybe not what we want, but with what we need. And we actually bow to that. We embrace it. We pay attention to it. something miraculous happens. In many ways, that's what every teacher on every stage is saying at this conference. This is another way of saying it. Sufficiency is precise. It is being met, sometimes by something you really didn't want, like a bankruptcy or a divorce. But it's the universe meeting you with exactly what you need to take the next evolutionary step in your life, to be the person you need to be. If you recognize it as the universe giving you exactly what you need, with love, with nobility, with appreciation, with respect for who you are, you receive it, you incorporate it, you embody it, you learn from it, and you grow from it. Sufficiency is distinct from abundance. So I'm going to just talk about that for a very short time. Abundance is more than you need, and that's a wonderful thing. But there's a principle of sufficiency that I'd really like to leave you with. It's probably the most important thing I'm going to say, and I was going to do exercises and all these wonderful things in this lovely 45 minutes, but I'm going to just really want to leave you with this. This is the principle of sufficiency, and I'll give you the short version, but here's the long version. If you let go of trying to get more of what you don't really need, it frees up oceans of energy that's all tied up in that chase to turn and pay attention to what you already have. When you pay attention to what you already have, when you nourish it, when you're grateful for it, when you share it, when you make a difference with it, it expands. So let me say that again. When you let go of trying to get more of what you don't really need, it frees up all that energy that's locked into that chase, that frantic chase, to turn and pay attention to what you already have. When you nourish what you already have, when you share what you already have, when you make a difference with what you already have, it expands. That is, in my view, the radical, surprising truth about the universe. Another way of saying it that's much shorter is what you appreciate appreciates. What you appreciate appreciates. So I would like you to, I'm going to do one exercise, and we have 2 minutes, so you have to be very efficient. So turn to one other person, and if it has to be 2, that's okay, but not 3. And do it without talking so that it's faster. So just identify by tapping someone or taking their hand or pulling on their hair or do something to them to let them know you're going to be their partner. Okay, quietly. Students, no talking, no talking. Okay, very good. Okay, so now just take a good look at this person. If you have 2 people, it's kind of hard to look at both of them and do the best you can. And look, is there anything lacking in this face? Look at this beautiful human being. Look at those eyes. Look at how the hair or lack of it frames their face. Look at how kind they are when they laugh. Look at those little crinkly lines. Those are from kindness, not from age, kindness. And if you now just look at them and, be still for a moment. Look at them. Look right in their eyes. It's a little confronting, but it's also so juicy and delicious. And now do this totally cool thing. Try this. If you smile at them, they will smile back. They won't be able to not do it. Okay, so the person with the longer hair, determine who that is right away. That person's going to start, and you have 1 minute only, because, I'm supposed to end soon, to share with the shorter-haired person the bounty and blessing and enoughness of your life. You have 1 minute. Don't leave anything out. Ready, go. 10 more seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Raise your hand if you can hear the sound of my voice. Raise your hand if you can hear the sound of my, oh my God, you're so good. I used to teach first grade. That's how you get people to be quiet. Okay, now, short-haired person, 1 minute, ready, go. Share the bounty and blessing of your life. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Raise your hand if you hear the sound of my voice. Awesome. Give your partner a big hug. That's it. I love you. Goodbye.